Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be doing a sketchbook flip through. So this is probably my main sketchbook. I do have a few that I work through and they are Royal Talens sketchbooks. So this is the 13 by 21 centimeter size and this is what I reach for daily. I'm going to be flipping through the first half, so this one's not quite finished yet, but we are definitely getting there, especially now I've started a daily art challenge again. So I've just decorated this one with a Sumiko Gurashi sticker and I started this last year, so this does have the end of the daily art challenge, the original one from last year in here as well, and it takes us up to December. So I started with this spread and a lot of these earlier spreads are quite dirty and messy. I don't seal my sketchbook because I prefer not to use fixative in here just because of the smell. So you might be able to see that there will be some smudges and seep through on some of the pages. But I really like this page. This was done with gouache and this was just me exploring on Google Maps, which is one of my favourite places for references, and I generally go on the Street View and then drive around and paint what I see. And I really like this one because I've included little elements that I wouldn't normally draw, like the cars and little elements like that. And I just think it tied together really nicely. Panel spreads are also in my comfort zone, so you'll be seeing a lot of those. So these were some very quick studies. This was prepping for an exhibition I did last summer and I was just practicing the views. So it started with an acrylic base of pink, which was quite a cool pink compared to what I usually do, and then gouache on the top. Gouache didn't really like to sit on top of the acrylic because obviously it's water-based over the acrylic, and so it didn't like to sit on there. But I do like the texture that it gives, and these were just some very quick composition studies. Then we have this butterfly spread, which I did turn into a print, which is on my Etsy shop. So I can see here this was on the 31st of July, so quite a while ago, but I still really love this spread. You can definitely see where it's gotten really dirty and messy, but I tend to scan my pages quite quickly and photograph them on the day. So generally the final art that you see won't ever be this messy. But I just really like the simplicity of this one. Even though there's quite a lot on there, it was just a base of gouache with coloured pencil details over the top. And then we have this spread which really shows the damage on this sketchbook. Obviously I've been using this for a while and it's really come apart there. But again, this was a Google Maps spread. This was in Portugal, but I found the Google Maps we use via MapCrunch, which is a random Google Maps generator. And I really like these. You can see I timed them as well. So this one was 7, 10, 8 and 8 minutes. So they are quite messy, but I find that keeps me really loose. I love the texture that I create just through working fast. Again, this is gouache and then coloured pencils and Neocolors on the top. This piece was an experiment with acrylic ink, and I have to say I don't like this one. It's very vibrant and uses a lot of purples which I don't normally use, so it definitely doesn't feel very me. But I do like the vibrancy of the acrylic ink, and I got the acrylic ink for my birthday last year, so this is probably one of the earlier experiments with it. I can see that I used a flat brush which created a lot of texture in the sky, and I definitely struggled down here. I remember doing this stone area a lot bigger and then covering it up. But I do like the white of the waves, but I'm not sure if it really comes through. But there are little elements of this that I think are quite nice. These I really enjoyed. These were some really quick 10-minute studies from photos I took in Barcelona. I really like going back through my photos from trips and drawing from them, and I thought this would be a really interesting study on drawing fast and using urban scenes. So usually when I set timers, I stick to my comfort zone and do countryside or landscape images. So I wanted to try and replicate the timed energy and looseness that comes from my sketches on a very busy scene. And I actually think it worked really nicely. Definitely has a lot of energy in these sketches, and obviously you have to work quickly and decide what you do want to include and what you want to omit because you don't have the time to add it all in. And I think it works really nice. I think you can tell this is like the Sagrada Familia, and then this is a view from Park Güell. This was done with Ecoline brush pens to put down like the base colours, and then coloured pencils and Neocolors over the top. I also really like the addition of these little figures, which I don't often put in my drawings, just to show a sense of scale. Another spread similar to the butterflies one, these are some beetles. So we're into August now, and again this was gouache with coloured pencil and Neocolor over the top. And I just really like filling my spreads in this way. I haven't done it for a while, so I definitely want to go back to something like this and maybe expand the prints in that range in my shop. This is a spread documenting a walk to Buckler's Heart from Bewley. I really enjoy documenting walks in this way. I've done it a few times in my sketchbooks before, and it just means that I remember the day a little bit better. I find that whenever I document something in my sketchbook, it helps the memory feel more vivid, and that's definitely the case with this one. I really like the colour palette in this one. It feels very soft and warm. It was obviously summer at the time, and I think that comes through. This wasn't done with paint, this was all Tombow brush pens, some Ecoline brush pens, Neocolor and coloured pencils. And I really like some of the textures I've got here despite not using any wet media. And then these are some studies from Emma Carlisle's Patreon. So I'm a member on her Patreon, and the topic for this session was tree climbers. You can see I only spent 10 and 15 minutes on these, but I really like them actually. They are very out of my comfort zone. I don't draw people, and I often don't draw such busy scenes, but I really like these ones, and definitely something I want to continue. I really don't draw figures very much, but I have started doing live drawing more, and I think I'm getting more confident with them. So I think this was after the Daily Art Challenge had finished, and I was struggling to make time for my sketchbook work, and that's one of the reasons why I've started a new Daily Art Challenge. But I was definitely not prioritising creating anymore. So these were really quick studies. This one was 5 minutes just because I was getting annoyed with myself saying I didn't have time. So I literally just gave myself 5 minutes and did this very, very messy and scribbly study of a picture I found on Pinterest. And then this was just because I was interested in the architecture from these photos from Burns and Hill Bescher. They look like fake houses, like the structures were just really interesting to me, so I just wanted to draw those on the other side of this spread. So this was a study of somewhere I've not drawn before. I will pop the name down here because I can't remember, but I do know this one was made into a Patreon exclusive print, and I do really like it. I think it's got a lot of energy. I really love the water. I think that turned out really nicely, and then the softness of the background. I really enjoy drawing buildings in this way, and it was quite a complicated image, but I think it works really nicely together. This was done with gouache, some brush pens, and then coloured pencils and Neocolors. This one was done on a Patreon YouTube live stream, and quite a simple one, very in my comfort zone in terms of the panels and the colours. I don't often use red, so these pictures had some really vivid red barns, and I really like the way that that works. I thought it might be too vivid, but I actually think it blends in nicely, especially with the greens. And then the little pops of pink, which was something I was just getting into and I think works really nicely. Again, this is gouache, Neocolor and coloured pencil. And I remember this day I was dropping off the artwork for the exhibition, and I decided to walk a little bit further and just draw the view that I found because I still had time on my car parking ticket. And so I literally just sat on the wall and drew these buildings, which is near Southampton Town Quay. I did take my pencil case with a few colours. These buildings obviously weren't pink, but I didn't want to do beige again, and I really love the pop that it gives. I think it makes these pieces, so I'm glad I took those. So that was an Ecoline brush pen, some Tombows, and then some coloured pencil over the top. And they are really simple. They didn't take very long at all, but I think they work really nicely. And I definitely want to do more plein air work like this year. Then I visited my brother and sister-in-law, and they had some bantam chickens, and so I took lots of photos and then painted these afterwards. So I didn't sketch this first, I literally just went straight in with the paint, and that's the technique I often use just to keep me loose. I find that adding in the sketching element beforehand makes me lose my interest. I get bored quite easily when I have to do that, and so I find just putting the paint straight down keeps me fast, and I do think the energy comes through in these as well. Then I added on some coloured pencils over the top. So pretty simple, but I think that their little personalities and character really come through. This was another session with Emma Carlisle where we were drawing underground animals. This was actually my first study, and then I did a second one because I wasn't quite happy with how it turned out in my large A4 sketchbook. And I remember things going quite wrong down here. So these little animals, the badgers and the rabbits, are collage, and I don't love this. I think it's very messy, but in a bad way. I think it's a bit sloppy, and I didn't spend super long on here, but I do know I was trying to keep things lighter, and you can see that pink coming through again as well, which I do think lightens the whole thing up. So this spread didn't go on my Instagram, but this was for Tombow, so they were doing a celebration of International Artists Day, and that's what this one was for. So I was doing this for Tombow UK, and I wanted to showcase all the different elements of the UK. So obviously we've got cities, countryside. This one was up in Scotland, but I did add in the red phone box, and then our beautiful coastline, and then the classic rain and English tea. And I thought a panel spread would be perfect for showcasing like the nation, and so I was pleased with how this turned out. I didn't mean for this pink to be so vibrant, so that was kind of a mistake, but it is, I don't think it looks completely out of place because I've tried to tie in the purples around and then the red up here. This was completely done with Tombow brush pens and then the Tombow Eroger 10 pencils. This was from Sarah Dyer's Patreon, so this was 25 minutes, and I did do the background with some gouache and a base layer of the sea in gouache, and then I went over the top with mostly Neocolor and some coloured pencils. Again, this isn't my usual topic, but I do really like it. I think that the Neocolors really help bring out the vibrancy, and I did enjoy drawing this boat. So this is another one that didn't make it on my Instagram grid. So this was obviously when I wasn't doing my daily art challenge, but still trying to pick up my sketchbook when I could. And this was when I first got some little soft pastel sticks. I now really love using pan pastels, so this was my first foray way back then on just using the sticks and trying to add a softness and texture to my work. And again, this does feel quite different for me. I remember adding in some water and some Neocolors to try and blend it all together. I do really like these birds, but I think the composition isn't quite right. But you can definitely see this was where I was starting to get interested in texture. Then a spread which I always enjoy and generally gets received really well as well. These were some fish drawn from my favourite reference book, which is The Natural History, A Visual Guide to Everything on Earth. And I always set a 20-minute timer for these spreads and go straight in with gouache, no sketching again, and then coloured pencils and Neocolors over the top. A really simple page, but I also enjoy upping the saturation on the reference and really making the fish as colourful and vibrant as I want. These next two I was really trying to loosen up, and so these are some studies of a photo I took in the New Forest. I was trying to be really thick with the paint, so this is acrylic and then lots of brush pens and some Neocolors over the top. It's very messy, but I actually really enjoyed creating this, and I really remember having fun with this one and this one. I wasn't really worrying about what I was creating, I just wanted to explore mark making, and I think you can see the fun in here. There's a lot of pink, which obviously wasn't really in the reference photo I was using, but it was really fun playing with colour, and you can definitely see how they're linked. I really love this colour. This is a Tombow brush pen, and I think it works really nicely with these yellower greens. This was from a Zoom session with my patrons, so this was the adventure in the Serengeti. I did quite a few pieces from this Zoom session in other sketchbooks, but I think this one was quite near the end. They were timed, and I don't know that the zebras were very successful, but you know what they are, and I think that's one of the good things if you are drawing zebras. You add some stripes and everyone will know what it is. But I did really enjoy adding on these little birds, and it's very messy and I could add a lot more to it, but for the time I think it was okay. Then this is actually a plein air spread, so we went to Winchester in September, and I remember it was a really warm day, so me and my partner just sat in the grounds in front of this cathedral, and then I drew what was in front of me. So because I was plein air, I had brush pens with me. This is the beige Ecoline brush pen for the building base. And then some Tombow for the green, and then coloured pencils for all of the rest of the details. This was when the Queen had just died, so I do remember there being lots of flowers and bouquets here, so I added those in. And I just really enjoyed this spread. I don't often like my plein air work because it feels so different to my usual stuff, but I think this one captured what I wanted it to, and considering it was quite a detailed cathedral, I think I managed to simplify it but keep it obvious to what it is. And then this is another plein air piece but with acrylic ink. So I actually took my acrylic ink with me. I don't often take paint or anything like that when I go outside, but I was trying to push myself. And I remember being quite pleased with this one, although again it didn't feel quite me. I did really enjoy taking the paint with me though and using the wet medium outside of the studio. Again, I liked the pink. I think the really yellow green with the pink works really nicely. And then the simplified leaves in the tree. So this was the acrylic ink base, some brush pen, and then some luminance coloured pencils and Neocolor for the details on the top. This is actually water. It was a really green and dirty little pond. So not the nicest view, but it was just something about all the textures that I wanted to try and capture. Then this is an image which was from Google Maps. This is of the Dorset countryside, and I was really pleased with this one. I experimented with some negative space work, so you can see here in the ferns where I've kind of drawn around the area of the plant. So I put down a layer of acrylic ink, so this is all acrylic ink and some gouache over the top, and then I put on the coloured pencil layer for all of the texture. I really like this one and all the warm tones mixed with the greens, and then quite a textured sky. And I also really enjoyed adding this new technique and just playing around with that. And this is also a print in my Etsy shop. Another one where I took my acrylic ink with me and went plein air. So I was really trying to push myself with taking wet medium out with me. This was where I was just sat on the edge of a lake. And again, I don't love this one, it doesn't feel very me, but I do really love drawing outside. So despite not ever creating work I absolutely love when I paint outside, I still continue to do it because I just really love the act of painting. I find myself being really mindful when I paint outside, and I can really relax and just focus on what's in front of me. So this has really nice memories despite not really loving the result. Here's a very clearly unfinished spread. This was using a photo from a Facebook group. I asked the photographer for permission to paint it. It's just a really ethereal and pretty sky, but I didn't ever end up finishing it or putting more things in the panels. I was trying to do a really limited colour palette spread, and I just don't think it really worked. I think I needed a darker tone to add in the silhouettes a bit more, but it was still a good experiment. Another spread from a YouTube live session with my patrons. I'm really happy with this. This was really bumping up the saturation again and using colours I don't often use. And again, using some views I found on Map Crunch. So I was moving around Latvia and finding all these lovely houses and trying to stick to a relatively limited colour palette. Again, using colours I don't often use, and I just think this spread feels very playful. It's kind of like a toy town, so when you do visit places on Google Maps, you don't have to keep them as they are, and I very often try to, so this was a really nice reminder that I can push them a bit further and change the colours up if I want to. Then this was from the same session. This was just a very quick final image, and I had definitely loosened up at that point, and I think you can tell I was being quite loose with my brush marks, so I think this is acrylic ink, and then maybe some gouache. I remember putting some Neocolor over here because it was kind of like sunset, so you wouldn't know that this, if I cover that up, it obviously just looks like a blue sky day, but what drew me to this piece was the sun setting, and it kind of just looked like a big blob of pink over here, so I don't know if it was very successful, but I do know I enjoyed painting this one and being quite loose with adding in all the little details. Then I did these 5-minute panels, so again on a very short timer, kept to a limited colour palette of 4 colours. Again, I think I could have done with a dark one. I feel like I've really learned how to do limited colour palettes now, simply because of these experiments I did. But again, these were from Google Maps. I went to Botswana and drew some panels with the views that I found. This was from a live session on Instagram that I watched from TJ, who's Sketch It Studio, and I will link her down below. She picked these really beautiful images of autumn in her home city, and it's definitely different for me. I very rarely use oranges and reds like this, but I did enjoy it. I was quite loose with it. I think I put some acrylic ink down and then used the Ecoline brush pens I never use, so the reds and the very bright oranges and yellows, and then I added in the pink Ecoline and some coloured pencil and the blue for the sky. So although this is very different for me, I can see it's super loose and messy. We were on timers, so this was 8, 3 and 3 minutes, so very quick. But I do think there's a lot of energy in these, and it was nice to use some different colours. Then a spread of panels. This was kind of in prep for Folktale Week, my final Folktale work, which is a prompt list on Instagram in November. And although my Folktale work didn't look anything like this was really interesting for me to try some more muted tones, test out some colour palettes, and I knew I wanted to set it in the forest, so these were just some really interesting and fun experiments to do. I didn't sketch first, and I remember like filling in this spread with the green and then going around it with the purples, and instead of just doing a block colour for the background, I used lots of different shades, and I think that works really nicely. I still really love this spread, even though it's messy. So again, timers 7, 7 and 15, and there's just a texture and feeling to these that I really enjoy, and I will link up above if you want to see a flip through of the Folktale Week work. This was done as part of the Tate reels I did, so I worked with Tate Modern last year and I was studying Cezanne. They still have the Cezanne exhibition at the Tate Modern. I think it's till mid-March, so I will leave the link down below to the information for that if you're interested. But I really fell in love with Cezanne whilst I was doing this project, and this is a lake by my house which I've drawn many times and have worked at plein air before, and I was inspired by Cezanne to go back and see the view again. He liked to paint things a lot of times, and so although for me I was getting a bit bored of the lake view, it really helped me see it in a different view, and obviously this is a very different style to my usual, and it just shows me that I can really draw the same thing in many different ways. Although this doesn't have the usual layer of coloured pencil and Neocolor over the top, I just used gouache for this, and I still think there's quite a lot of tone and shadow that I've managed to capture. I really love the different colours in the background and then the energy of the water, as well as these blue lines here for the tree. It's very different for me, but I still really like this one. And then you can see the correlation between this spread and this one. Again, some more Folktale Week preparation. You can really see how the colour from the next spread has gone over here, so very dirty and messy, but that's what sketchbooks are for. 4.5 minutes, I think this one was the same, and then 10 minutes for this one. I used gouache and then coloured pencils over the top. These are a lot sloppier and messier than the other ones, but definitely the same colour palette, and I remember pairing this purple with the green and really enjoying that. And I liked that I outlined the snail in blue as well, instead of just using a darker brown. So this was on Folktale Week. I'd just done day 1 of the Folktale Week work, which looked like this. And I was trying to decide whether I was being too tight with that one. I filmed it for Patreon, and I remember thinking that it was not quite the style that I wanted. So I got my sketchbook out when I just finished doing that work and filled this spread. So it was a lot looser. This is acrylic ink and then some Neocolor for the lines. But I remember really trying to be playful with it, and I did decide to continue with that other sketchbook in the end. It was very rough paper, so it meant I couldn't be this loose. I couldn't add many details on the top. But I still really like this style, and I might still do another story or narrative-based work using my usual style in this way. This was another one from a Patreon live stream. I tend to work in multiple sketchbooks when I'm on the live stream, so I don't have to wait for things to dry and don't need to worry about turning the page. This was quite a quick one. This was at the end, so I can see that I have warmed up and I'm very loose. Again, this is just gouache, coloured pencils and Neocolors. A very simple landscape, but I do like the colours and the warmth from the sunset, and then these little sheep in the foreground. A 20-minute study using some references from Google Maps. This is quite subtle and toned back for me. I usually am a bit more vibrant with the colours, but I really like these. I think it really shows like an autumnal scene, but like a really cold autumn day, and I think I've captured that quite nicely. I really love this pastel pink. Usually I use the warmer salmon pinks, but I think this cooler pink tone works really nicely, and you can see like where I use the purple for these spreads, how that's coming in here, so like the burgundy. I find it really interesting being able to see the work develop in the sketchbook and seeing decisions that I made earlier come back through in later pages. I've still got my usual green and blues that I like to use, but I've paired it with more ochre and orange shades, and I just really like the way this spread turned out. So we're coming into the last 3 pages, and these were done in New York when I went on holiday in December. So this was drawn at the Met Museum. I obviously didn't fill the rest of the spread. I just found a quiet area to draw this guy, and this is just Neocolors and coloured pencil. And then we went to the cafe and I sat down, we had a drink, and I drew the view. I can't remember where this is, so I will write it down below again, but I don't love this, but it was still really nice to actually do some drawing whilst at the Met. It was a place that I've always wanted to visit and was blown away by the size. And this like atrium area was really impressive to me. It was obviously very busy, so I did have to simplify it a lot. And I do like how the background has like a lot of grey tones, and then I try to pull all these statues into focus by using just one blue coloured pencil. And then I coloured those in a bit with the Ecoline, which kind of smudged the pencil because I think this is a Derwent drawing pencil, so it was water soluble. And it's not something that I'm ever going to like scan or do anything with, but I just like that I was able to draw whilst I was there. And now we've made it to the middle of the sketchbook, so this is the last spread I'm going to be sharing with you today. These are 2 panels again that I drew in New York. This was actually drawn back at the hotel with a photo that I'd taken of Central Park on that day. And then this one I drew whilst there. So this was done plein air off the Brooklyn Bridge. It was a really cold day but beautiful blue skies, and so I drew this whilst we were sat there. I really love the way this spread looks. It's a little bit softer than I would normally go, but I think they sit together nicely. And again, I've got a really lovely memory of sitting there and drawing this whilst on holiday. And I'm really pleased with like the details I've added to this cart here. I definitely do enjoy drawing like little urban elements like that, so definitely something I want to practice more of. So that's the end of this first half of the sketchbook tour. I really hope you enjoyed watching, and if you have a favourite spread then please do let me know down below. Like I said, I am doing another daily art challenge, so this is getting filled up quite quickly, so I'm sure I'll be back before you know it with another sketchbook flip through of the second half of this one, but I will link down below all of my previous sketchbook tours as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week with a new video. See you later!